to play. They want to let their opponent build up a big board and then remove afterwards. And so it's a very, very difficult balance to strike here for che0nsu as to how aggressively you're actually allowed to clear the warrior board.
But on top of that, I will say it's not all doom and gloom for Demon Hunter, because this warrior is not like most other warriors in that they do not run healing. They just have their hero power. And so chip damage that Demon Hunter does get in the beginning, whether it's just from hero power or swing of weapons, can be relevant later on when they're putting together their combo pieces. It does feel like a Fortunate Skull is required to get there, but we shall see. I'm already liking the heap from che0nsu to have the skull with only one card possibly going on the left of it. Gives you a very good chance of outcasting.
Yeah, you just want to pray that it's not Il'gynoth, and then you'll be happy. The more interesting mulligan, I think, is from Alan, where Gnarg and Conditioning is kind of where I'm looking at as like the two cards I would like to keep most. But at the same time, Sword Eater has a high mulligan win rate in both matchups, and Watley is kind of just insane against Demon Hunter with the amount of draw it affords you and all the buffs you can do there after that.
It is super interesting, but all of those cards have their merits, but I think taken together, it kind of gets a bit sketchy because, well, for one, the Watley can just draw you Sword Eater, and for another one is Conditioning. You want to get that down on as many minions as possible, but if it's post-Watley, it might happen too late. So Alan here just going for a bit more of the early game, and I think he ends up with at least one decent Conditioning target in the Crab Rider, but the Cutting class will get him some draws as soon as this Gnarg goes off.
Yeah, the real thing that I came to realize with this deck is that Conditioning at rank 1 is still very powerful. You very often do just want to go for that and get an immediate buff. I'm not certain that this hand is necessarily the one to do so, given that buffing Troublemaker by +1/+1 basically just does not matter, and Crab Rider is the one other minion. I could see it being saved until turn 5 now and just filling up your hand.
True. For che0nsu here, there was like the temptation to spend your mana either on Spectral Sight to draw a single card or even on the Arcanist because you want to get the skull in place at some point, but I absolutely think that is too frivolous a use of the Arcanist. You want to save that alongside Immolation Aura because those two cards paired together, that's 6 damage AoE, that can get past even rank 2 conditioning boards a lot of the time.
And oh my goodness, is Alan going to have to start killing his opponent quickly? As good as anything he can do is looking here, it has to be skull into you are almost certainly dead on turn 8. It is very unlikely that you are surviving past that point. And so now it's time to turn up the heat.
At the same time, he doesn't want to coin out the conditioning immediately because you want to get an early che0n down. That is very strong against Demon Hunter. Consume Magic no longer available to them. che0nsu does have that one Sigil of Silence, but it's kind of hard to set up. Oh man, so much juice.
It's just too much.
And the double jump is guaranteed to get him either I-Beam or Philosophy here. Because he did just play both Spectral Sights already and has both skulls in hand.
Yeah, the Philosophy I think you do probably play. When you have 2 skulls in hand, you have a reasonable chance of drawing the other Moog for 0, and then you could copy that. Especially as, you know, he's drawn a few of the combo cards already with double Arcanist and Moog. He's really looking to discount Il'gynoth or, again, that other Moog. But I don't hate him just throwing it down.
And Rukara is a pretty clutch draw here for Alan. The Wind Fury on the Crab Rider has some very nice synergy with that as well. He should be happy with this board presence in most worlds, leading into a coin che0n, but it so happens that che0nsu's hand checks this perfectly. He gets to expend the Arcanist, free up 1 skull from the left, and he has 1 Immolation to deal with this.
I bet you can do this.
It's just so clean. The hand plays itself, honestly, at this point for che0nsu.
And for anybody who missed the memo, che0n did get buffed during the core set rotation, along with a lot of other previously classic cards. Now, he and Bane both have 5 attack.
Who would have missed that, Gia? God, what a noob whose job it is to know about things in Hearthstone. God.
Oh, the Sigil of Silence. Pretty good here for che0nsu because he can deny the Death Rattle on this.
I think that's Flames, actually. Yeah.
My bad. Yeah.
As I found out from watching frenetic stream the other day. In Spanish, it's Sigil de Llamas. Which I know is obviously llamas in Spanish, but it's just funny to think of llamas coming down and stomping on your board instead of flames.
Well, flame decidedly worse than silence in this situation.
Oh, yes.
Because Alan has stuck very annoying minions for che0nsu to have to deal with, and that means that che0nsu will have to spend some combo pieces to heal up here. The question is how many? He has tons of Moargs, and as long as he doesn't spend the one that was discounted by Skull, I think he's fine.
Demons.
Yeah, it's really
we could see Moarg, Thalnos I-Beam, something like that, and then he can equip Warglaves as well. Question is whether he wants to expend the Arcanist for even more healing, but lose a potential stronger combo piece towards the end.
Yeah, I guess you go I-Beam first, and then you follow up with the... the Illidari Studies if you're going to play that on this turn. Just because you can then maybe cheapen your Skull on the left as well. Although I guess the Warblades is probably too perfect in terms of mana expenditure.
Right. che0nsu electing for better heal here. I think it's not necessary for him to have held on to the Arcanist because he does still have a cheap Moarg. He can still get well enough burst once the Il'gynoth plus Spell Scream comes off, for his sake, hopefully the second Skull.
So I'm obviously looking at going Coin Troublemaker on this turn because it looks kind of clean to get a big minion on board and consistent damage, but do you like the look of instead of Conditioning turn to buff up some of these rushes and go a bit wider?
I think Troublemaker in the ideal world would be my first choice. The problem is it's not guaranteed for him to get rid of the Moarg, and he really wants to send this che0n face. So I would probably cave and take the guaranteed removal on the Moarg with a conditioning turn. He still sets up quite a lot of stats, given that Moarg can come down alongside it.
Yeah, you get a 2
Mancryk, sorry.
Yeah, you're not turning your nose up at this, that is for sure.
He goes Wandmaker instead of 1/1 Mancryk, so I'd imagine it's just going to be 1 Dark Moon, coin Mancryk, and then he can swing with the Moarg.
Yeah, you'd hope so, otherwise the ordering on this turn gets very, very funky with Cutting Class instead.
Oh, okay, so just not going for Mancryk at all. So saving the coin, Alan obviously wants to have Alexstrasza as an option for next turn, but I'm not sure if it was worth giving up a bit more stats this turn for.
He also doesn't want to tank the damage, I would imagine would be part of the consideration, but at 24, you're dead to pretty much everything they're going to throw down anyway, if they have the combo.
Yeah, if it's 24 plus they have the weapon, I do agree that that's already within most of the breakpoints. This is a very interesting studies for che0nsu because he has 2 disruption options here. I don't think you want to glide this hand. This is a good hand. It is literally just lacking 2 cards for lethal, so I would look at Stelina.
Yeah, I agree. I think
probably just get stuck though because you want to skull this turn still.
If they have any good cards that have been buffed, they probably would have played them already. Like if an Alexstrasza or Troublemaker has +2/+2, it's annoying, but you're going for the combo anyway at that point. You don't really care if they put more stats on the board now. You're not going to clear all these minions, you're just going to win the game with OTK.
If che0nsu's waiting this long, he might actually just play one of them this turn because I feel he still needs to skull and then decide what comes off the skull. But... oh! Vengeful Spirit? That does nothing.
What is that?
Why not just take Stelina? Nothing. Why not take Stelina? It's 1 less health, but you get to potentially disrupt something relevant in Alan's hand.
And now he is dead with coin Alexstrasza to close out the game. I have no idea what happened at the end there from che0nsu.
Me too, gonna be honest. I also had no idea what was happening with Surrender, but he won. So I'm gonna say that something went wrong here for che0nsu. 3 mana floated. I mean, if he was aware of Alex in mind, then he could have 2 options. Either you skull right away and then you just say, I need something better than just a Moarg removal turn. That's valid. Sometimes it doesn't work out. Or you take the Moarg clear turn alongside the Outcast card that he picked. But everything from the choice of the Outcast to the way that turn ended just boggles me.
Like, even if you're afraid of just, like, losing the APM, just, like, click on anything. Even if you're not going to play it, it doesn't matter. Because the important thing was playing the skull there. He had outs for lethal on that turn. If he'd gotten 1 mana Il'gynoth, 0 mana Moarg, or even a Illidari, a Philosophy to copy the 0 mana Moarg, and the Fellscream Blast that he already had in hand. Like, it was limited outs, but they were there. Just weird.
I don't know, Derek. You're right. There were outs that were there, either from a disruptive perspective or from going all in on his own game plan of just playing Skull and saying, if you have the lethal next turn, GG, but if you don't, I probably win with Il'gynoth in the near future. I just wonder what was going through che0nsu's head, and I really hope that it gets cleaned up for the rest of the series, because it's a really tough deck to play, this OTK Demon Hunter. If you're making even a small mistake, it could easily cost you the game. And that
Absolutely.
was a big mistake, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's not an easy deck to pilot, but, you know, when we went through testing, we realized if you're on it, you have a perfectly good matchup as the Demon Hunter, especially when you get Skull into Skull as a possibility in your starting hand, and then don't take it at the end there. Just, again, very, very weird stuff to close things out. I hope to give him the benefit of the doubt that there was something there that he was considering that we are maybe not seeing in this instance. But at the very least, it did not come to fruition. So we are going to be heading to Game 2. Once again, our players get to switch onto their secondary or tertiary deck, should they so desire, but they do not have to. You'd have to guess, though, that Alan, with Cult Neophyte and Ogremantcer in his secondary list, has to be switching over to that for the Demon Hunter.
For sure. This is one of the main matchups you would have in mind. I'd imagine it's also pretty good against, say, Token Druid, if Alan ever runs into Blitzjump later on. But we shall see. We already saw just how annoying the triple Neophyte turn surrender set up for Tiz was, and the Ogremantcer is certainly nothing to scoff at as well. But the opener for Alan, I feel, is entirely too slow. And again, we have that kind of negative synergy, I want to call it, between Wadley and conditioning if your game plan is to get on board early.
Interesting. I very much like the conditioning keep last game. Here, I think I liked it as well, but the difference is obviously he's on the play now, so he's working with a whole less card, which obviously is a big difference in terms of your ability to make a board that the Demon Hunter can't deal with the buff.
As for this first choice, though, these are pretty below average, I have to say, for Rush Warrior. You probably just take their Krasinov because it has the most attack on it, and sometimes you get to buff Fiery War Axe. But I think Alan was really just looking for something to play next turn, because right now his hand is super slow. Samuro is not even a real threat if it doesn't get buffed.
I could see where you're coming from the Rusty Raider pick here, because no matter what you do here, you're leaving yourself up to what you draw. You don't have control over what's going to come. And if you get a buff card, Rusty Raider is much better. If you can turn this into a 3/10 with Taunt, that's just good. It protects your board, especially with Shield of Honor to buff it. But if you get Weapon, then you want the Krasinov to buff that. So either way, you're relying on something coming off the top. And I think the Rusty Raider to protect the rest of his minions is not bad.
Can definitely see that. It is a welcome sight for Alan to have top deck that Wand Maker. Meanwhile, che0nsu just drawing a little bit more. He did go for double jump turn 1, which I often question whether you want to do that early, because if you get the skull off of it, it's obviously hard to get into outcast position. But I think it's a fair assumption that che0nsu, at that point, if he did get skull in the place of what is currently I-beam, he could have freed it up from the left. So I'm not too mad at it. Right now, it does just look like a sigil turn, though.
Yeah, I think it's just a pretty standard spend the cards on your left to get Skull over there kind of play now for che0nsu. But for Alan, the real question for me is kind of like a deck building choice here, because one of the first things I realized when you're playing Warrior against Demon Hunter is Samuro is absolutely god-awful. You're playing a 1-attack 4-drop, and I'm kind of surprised that che0n took the Axe instead of the Samuro. Again, this is not purely a deck constructed for Demon Hunter, because it could be good against Mage and maybe the Priest as well. But having said that, I would have liked to have seen that go away, because che0n is just good in this matchup. It's very difficult for the Demon Hunter to kill completely.
Yeah, I mean, I'd imagine it's probably a tech for Mage rather than Demon Hunter, because che0n I could see being very punished by devolving missiles.
Sure, yeah.
Something like that, and having reactive potential probably decent against Mage. In any case, che0nsu does not hit the Samuro good idea because Alan is running Shield of Honor, but it was tempting to just say it's not going to give you very much damage and you get the Frenzy out of the way and you're eventually going to deal with the Samuro, but I agree that the risk was too high.
Yeah, and again, he's not running Shield of Honor, he generated it, but even then, it came off the one maker, but it's still scary for it to come down for sure.
So Moarg I-Beam Hero Power could be a play here.
Oh, I hate playing cards that aren't on the left-hand side, which is why this does make a good amount of sense to just, again, keep dumping everything from the left just to guarantee that skull.
And this makes for a very interesting pan out of the game because that obviously looked like an overcommittal of resources from che0nsu. He used very powerful combo pieces and overhealed, but because Alan has had such a slow start, it kind of allows che0nsu to do that and just focus on drawing cards off of Skull instead. However, it's still going to be very difficult to outcast because he has to play Fel Screamer, Thalnos, and I-Beam. That simply doesn't fit into a 5-mana turn even when he has coin because it's already 7 mana, accounting for the I-Beam being at 1, and that means the Skull is not coming down till turn 7 earliest.
It's a really tough choice here as well, actually, for Alan, because you can mess around with Crab Rider and Shield of Honor here, and I kind of had to think for a bit as to whether you're supposed to go double bump, then Shield of Honor, or bump Shield of Honor, bump again, because you can either have a 3-attack Murloc, or a 3 health, or 1 health with Divine Shield, and, like, it's better against the Immolation Aura here, but it's worse against the I-Beam. It's not necessarily obvious as to what the order was supposed to be there.
True. Is che0nsu just coining for no value whatsoever? I mean, you can coin at any time. Why would you do it now, right?
To get 1 mana I-Beam.
Oh, okay. True, true. Because it is still part of his clearing from the skull. Yeah, that is my bad. Although, rewinding a bit, I kind of wonder if che0nsu had potential to play Thalnos on the turn that he played the Ethereal Og Merchant. If he had coined that out, it kind of still gave him the spell damage and then potentially 1 less card in the way of Skull. But if you're saying that there's no way I'm going to Skull on 5 anyway, you don't need the coin for that.
No, you're actually right. That might have been a slight optimization.
In any case, Alan is well and truly out of gas at the moment. Next turn is a 1-attack 5-cost card. Not great. che0nsu looking like he could still get this pretty easily.
That's a decent draw, though, in all honesty, just to clear out the rest of his mana. Gets himself a 5-attack minion on board, obviously, once the immediate buff has been used up. And then he's just going to hopefully ride the Troublemaker to victory.
Yeah. It's as good a plan as any. Stelino is so nuts here.
It's got to be Vengeful Spirit, Gia. It was insane last game. You slam it again.
Oh, man. I'm hesitant, to dunk on che0nsu too hard here after having missed the skull thing, but Alan is like...
That is back-breaking. Oh my goodness. That has got to be the best Stelino I think I've ever seen.
Me too. It's also maybe one of 5 Stelinas I've ever seen. But I think it's absolutely worth delaying the skull for. He had a pretty good read. If they are willing to condition 2 cards only, it's a very good chance that it is a Troublemaker coming down on 8. Just something that he can play now, the weapon?
Yeah, like I kind of feel like che0nsu is just the best card there. Like maybe the Gnarg Glavesmith you can get some utility out of, but it's just pretty good, I think, even if you don't outcast it.
Sure. I mean, I was looking at either Gnarg or the weapon just to have the mana out of the way because the game plan is still about Skull, but it's worth respecting the 5/11 for sure.
And now for che0nsu, he doesn't need to race to his OTK. He can take a leisurely stroll towards his win condition now because he is just under no pressure whatsoever. This 5 damage face every turn, you can so easily deal with that with just an I-Beam or 2 later on.
Selena, brutal. Maybe that should be in a secondary or tertiary. I know somebody was running it. I think it was Shaxi, and he also had Sigil of Silence or something.
Right, yeah. Definitely worth playing around with, because when it's good, it's absolutely insane. It's just usually rubbish.
And for che0nsu, he doesn't even need the full combo to win at this point. He could just one for one get rid of Alan's minions. Barring, of course, the possibility of Watley off the top.
He doesn't need it, but I think he'll take it quite happily when he plays Skull again next turn. Like, just Il'gynoth, I think pretty much just ends the game, right? With Arcanist double Moarg, that has to be it.
And for Alan, if we're thinking of outs, I did mention Watley off the top being one of his only good draws at this point. Does Alex ever get there on her own? I don't think so.
Yeah, I'm thinking Troublemaker has to come off the top. Well, had to on this turn, or as you said, Watley. There's no Outrider's Axe. Even if there was, there's no minions to attack into in the first place.
And now che0nsu can have his cake and eat it. He can Skull and then play Moarg I-Beam if he's worried about this 511. And he has to be at this point because he's within range technically of Alex dealing a lethal. Actually, no, it would still be one off.
So again, it's literally just drawing Il'gynoth that wins in the game. So he wants to always be in a situation where when he draws that, he wins on the spot. So you don't want to be too overly zealous with your win condition here, I don't think.
Sure. So he could go Immolation, Chaos Strike, I-Beam, which is still a little bit off of dealing 11.
9, 6. Yeah, not quite.
I think it's fine to commit one Moarg though, because he has the other one plus 3 spell damage with the Ethereal and the Talented Arcanist.
Yeah, I mean, if he keeps like the Fellscream Blast down, so it just deals uber amounts of damage.
Okay. Looks like he's committing 2 combo pieces even, saying that you probably don't have 2 rush minions to deal with these.
Can't even deal with the Moarg.
Yeah, it is just not working out for Alan here. He is going to have to go back to the drawing board for game 3. But in Specialist, if your theory was already sound, then you never switch after game 2, because you should already be on your proper deck for the matchup.
Yeah, let's copy that. Moarg, Chaos Strike thrown in with alongside the Kurtrus. Sure, you just want to keep the draw rolling. Again, Il'gynoth equals GG as soon as it's found, and he has basically a 100% chance to find it for next turn.
There you go.
Is that not just lethal?
I thought it was.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
You're right, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I think it was, but oh well.
Alan has literally 0 outs from here. So even though che0nsu could have ended the game sooner, I'm not going to call this a big mistake like last game.
Yeah, not at all. That is just going to wrap it up now. Oh yeah, I wasn't even factoring the Moarg already on board. That was like a bajillion damage then for che0nsu. It wasn't even close. That was like 60 or something.
Not many cards left.
And here we go. Il'gynoth, Moarg. Spell damage, Fellscream Blast. You just never count here. You only count mana, not damage.
Yeah, Alan's going to be justifiably salty after that one. He had a game plan and one card alone completely destroyed it. It's not often you see the hand disrupting effects in Hearthstone, but when they come down, whew, they definitely sting. And so it's going to be, as you said, back to the drawing board. Game 3 is what it all comes down to. In Specialist Week, these are best of 3 matches. And again, in the Specialist meta, it is very, very rare that you get a player switching decks from games 2 to games 3. I think we've seen it like once in GM right at the start. Maybe Tice did it if my memory is serving me correctly, but I might be making stuff up there. It is just going to be, I think, the same matchup again, and hopefully for Alan, just drawing a slightly higher value hand because he just gassed out completely on turn 6.
Yeah, that is tough to account for when you are running still the cut-in classes, I believe, in this list. So, okay, 1 copy still. It is a bit unfortunate. He also didn't hit, what do you call it? Ringmaster Watley at any point. That would have been huge. So, I think for Alan, there's really not much he could have done in that outcome aside from what you're talking about, things before the actual match started, which is just thinking about whether Samuro belongs in a list if you do expect there to be more OTK Demon Hunter, and he very well could have just expected something else.
Yeah, exactly. That's the real artistry of Specialist, I think, is being able to make your secondary and tertiary decks target more than one matchup at once. You can have one in mind and kind of have a soft target on the others, and I do think that's what Alan has done here. But even then, against the mages, I kind of struggle to see what Samuro is really going to be doing, because it's not like you struggle clearing their minions as warrior. You struggle sticking a board and healing enough to outlast their damage, and it's not like you have apotheosis with the Samuro in this deck. But either way, it's going to be the same stuff. Again, Ogremasters, Neophytes in there, still trying to disrupt the Demon Hunter's game plan. And for che0nsu, he's just got to keep doing what he's been doing, because even though the first game was a bit of a disaster in the end, the overall draw he had was absolutely insane. He's had Skull on 6 both times so far.
Yeah, and that really is the important thing to beat this matchup. I've talked about how I feel that the Warrior is still favored, and I thought that the tech from Alan would make it even more favored, but maybe that thing in Specialist is happening where when you tech too hard, you actually just mess with the overall consistency of the main deck, which is, in this case, Demon Hunter Warrior wants to consistently build minions of a threat higher than 3 health in order to beat down the Demon Hunter.
Oh, well, here we go. Back on the coin. So that conditioning keep that he's had the opportunity to have in all 3 games does become a lot more tempting now. Like, I'm even considering a full keep here.
Yeah, looks good to me. I'm unsure if the conditioning necessarily comes down on turn 2, but even if it doesn't, this still has the option of bumper car on turn 2, and just turn 4 Ogremasters being the most important one.
Yeah, that's really the beauty of bumper car, is you can tempo it out and still get, if anything, even more value off of your conditioning and run thacks later on.
Also just slams the Moarg, and that just goes to show how interested he is in getting the skull to the left. Moarg against Warrior is not really carrying any threat of a downside because they are not running any damage-based spells.
Just its 2-mana 2/4, which again is pretty good at this point in the game, and does push Alan off of the bumper car or the Neophyte, which you'd have to imagine he was kind of more interested in on that turn if there wasn't a Moarg on the other side.
Could be, but then it could be that he just wants to get the most buffs on minions possible off of the conditioning, because it did seem like he was committed to not waiting for it to get to rank 2, which is perfectly fine. All he wants to do is clear up the road for the Ogremasters as much as possible, so it gives che0nsu the hardest time to deal with it.
Oh, this is going to be such a close game now. Alan has a hand with so much value, so much disruption as well, but it's going to have to overcome Skull into Skull again as an opportunity for che0nsu. If ever you were going to do it, obviously double Neophyte is the way to disrupt that, but he has to time it just right to get that disruption from just him being shot out of the game with double Skull.
And he can.
Yeah.
I mean, you're seeing double Skull into Skull. I'm seeing Neophyte into Neophyte. And yes, the second one, they still just Skull for 7 mana. But still, it makes che0nsu's life very, very awkward.
Ooh. Coin Watley, though, is interesting, because if you are thinking Neophyte into Neophyte, you kind of wanted the Ogremasters online beforehand, right? So that it's just another disruptive tool for your opponent.
Thought so as well. And
I guess there is the Sigil.
Leaving the Thalnos up here as well is, I guess, still just fine, because it's not like the 1 extra damage on the Watley matters, because che0nsu has Warglaives anyway. So Alan wanted to just push as much damage face as possible.
Are we really slamming I-Beam there? Like, It costs 1 at this point, but it's, I don't know, I feel like it could do more later on to kill a bigger minion.
Me too. I mean, I would be very happy to just use the charge of the weapon at that point. Okay, Vilefian looks pretty sick here, though.
Yeah, like, it fits very well, obviously, and it's probably the pick in this instance, but you don't really want to play stuff against Warrior. Like, it doesn't do that much. They're just going to have an insane way to rush in and kill it off. I guess if they wanted to go like Ogremancer or whatever, then it at least puts a proactive threat on the board. So again, it's the pick, but it's not insane.
True, true. It's just there as probably the ideal way to fill out his mana. Although, if che0nsu were in the 4D world, thinking in 3 dimensions ahead of us, there was a chance he would just save the discount altogether because of Neophyte.
Oh, true. Oh, maybe that was the play. You know,
I don't know if you can rely on that, though.
Yeah, you miss out on a 5-4 and 2 1-1s. Like I said, like, if they don't have exactly Neophyte, this is so much better.
And as it happens, even if he did do that, then Alan would respond with double Neophyte, very likely.
True.
One of them definitely going to come down here, and then Bumper Car, most likely. Oh, sorry, it's not buffed. So Dark Moon Rider plus the swing.
Yeah, not entirely sure on this ordering, but the principle is still there, right? You can use Weapon and the Rider to take out the big one, and then Bumper Car to follow up.
You can already see where Alan's head is at. Neophyte happens, it always happens. Let me spend the mana, then figure out the rest.
Sure,
there.
yeah.
Oh, both of them. Okay, so like I was discussing a while ago, second Neophyte probably not as relevant because on 7 mana they can still just play the Skull. So Alan here is just trying to make sure that che0nsu has no play whatsoever this turn. However, Immolation Aura is decent.
Yeah, you're just taking your bump aura. And Alan's got a clear board. If ever he was going to get the swing he needs to close this one out, this was the time to do it. And finally, it's the time for the Ogremancer. This is the trump card in the matchup for him. The Neophytes delay, but the Ogremancer tries to close things out here.
Yeah. It's also a big deal that che0nsu drew his other Immolation Aura. And so it's not going to be a clear on a bunch of 2/2s this turn. It can't be off of Skull and discounted. However, it means that next turn it can be Skull into play as much as he needs to and then end with Immolation Aura. So all the 2/2s that he generates get cleaned up.
Like, with the 0 mana studies, he can go like Arcanist, Studies, Orc Merchant, Immolation Aura, and then still Skull after all of that as well, if he needs to. Or even like, you know, Illidari Studies Skull first. Like, it's insane the amount of removal and card draw he can play next turn.
It truly is. But Alan has a double Rakara turn on his hands if he wants it, or Rakara Sword Eater. Honestly, I'm interested in the double Rakara. It's going all in right now. But if it gets cleared up, you follow up with Troublemaker.
Yeah, he's banking more immediate damage with the weapon, because obviously Rakara buff doesn't happen until it's attacked, so you don't get any immediate extra damage. And, you know, assuming your opponent can clear this up, which, like, even if they were 10 health Ogre-Mancers, you have to imagine with Arcanists, Immolation Auras, and Moargs as well, there has to be some way that they can clear it off.
Fair, but this is the crucial turn. che0nsu gets the second Skull, has still 2 mana to work with, and 2 mana is plenty in this situation when everything costs 0. He can fit in the Spectral Sight as well, while it's Outcast.
I was a little surprised not to see Illidari Studies first, just to get a mana discount on the Skull in case that was necessary. Then you could fit in the 1 mana Orc Merchant as well.
True. I think this turn is probably just going to be Arcanist with Immolation Aura. That's 6 on everything. So it's only the Ogre that gets left, and then your weapon can deal with it with Chaos Strike. So clean!
Yeah, it's just disgusting.
He net heals for 1 after this, so he'll be at 20. Safe from Troublemaker, safe from Alexstrasza. All he needs now is old Il'gynoth.
However, Alan's hand is no slouch. He's got Troublemaker into Alan870806 as well. It's powerful play. It's coming through now, which again, both Immolation Auras have been used. I-Beams come down already. che0nsu is running low on ways to deal with this. He needs the lethal now.
True. Otherwise, he has to use Fell Scream for healing. And okay, second Fell Scream means he can just use one now. I did miscalculate the healing. He net damaged for one instead of net healing for one. And that might be relevant at some point because he has to tread this very delicate balance between how much of the combo pieces is he willing to use on removal and healing and how much does he need to save for Il'gynoth. With 2 Moargs and 2 Ethereal Aug Merchants, I think he can very safely use 1 Fell Scream Blast, but Alan is just getting at che0nsu's head now. I love it.
Oh, he's just my spirit animal. Like, you have no idea if they actually have the lethal. You just assume that they're stupid and can't counter lethal properly, and then start emoting.
Alan is giving himself every percentage he can here. I don't care if this is BM. He knows he's in a bad spot. And so if he takes even 2 seconds away from che0nsu to hit the squelch button, it's maximizing his chances.
Because this is tough now. You know, he's got the ability to clear off, well, everything here if he wants to, but it's how much combo can you use to get there that is the important thing.
1 Moarg, 1 Aug Merchant, I think is very justifiable. Yeah, I-Beam, and then Fell Scream if you still need to. Doesn't even technically need to. Because Alan's at a point where he doesn't have that much health either, so che0nsu doesn't need 30 damage from Il'gynoth.
Enough is enough.
Was it Ogremancer bumper car here? Is that enough?
What now?
You see in both Immolation Aura, so we could even see something like Parade Leader, Crab Rider, and bank a lot of damage on board for the very next turn and say if you don't have the lethal, then I can kill you. The thing is, he hasn't seen Fell Scream Blasts.
These old bones just keep moving.
Rakara, Crab Rider, it's a lot of damage.
Yeah, I was really seeing if he could try and fit an Ogremancer on this turn, but I guess honestly even that is just too late at this point. It's past the point of mattering. It just needs maximum pressure on the board, which obviously this achieves beautifully, and just praying that somehow Alan870806 is enough to close things out next turn.
So Il'gynoth off the top is immediately lethal for che0nsu. Because he has 2 Fell Scream Blasts. A single Fell Scream Blast would deal 12 with
6,
the
12,
amount
24.
of...
Yeah.
The 2 would be just lights out.
That's a draw.
Okay.
They will never catch me.
That is still not the Il'gynoth. Okay, things get a bit tricky for che0nsu now though. He can Spectral Sight, I believe, and still have the mana to do the thing if it's immediately Il'gynoth off the top. So I agree with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Come on, Alan, where are the emotes? This is crucial. Take your percentage points. Last 4 cards, Double Jump, Philosophy, Eldrazi, Il'gynoth. That draws Philosophy. So he has no more chance of getting Il'gynoth this turn, which means he has to clear some portion of this.
He can draw Philosophy, play it, play a Moarg, clear some of the board, and then as long as he has second Moarg, Arcanist, and Fell Scream Blast, I think he still just gets there, right?
I agree, I agree.
Because that would do 3, 9, 18 damage.
He has to do it now, che0nsu, no!
He has to go now, right now.
He has like 8 seconds left. che0nsu! Okay, Moarg, 1 Arcanist.
I bet you can do this.
Okay, so this deals 3 apiece. Okay, so he heals for 9. Goes up to 28. So this is 13, 16, yeah, it's out of range of Alan870806. So che0nsu accomplished what he needed to, for sure.
It was really close, though.
Yeah, I was so scared.
And then what? It's just a 50-50 for the game next turn? Is that where we're at?
Well, Alan now, if he has perfect information, can calculate whether Alex draws up for healing gets him out of any breakpoints.
True.
Because he's seen Fell Scream Blast, he knows there's one left, he knows there's Moarg Aug Merchant, but he hasn't seen the Philosophy. So if it's Il'gynoth right off the top for che0nsu, his damage output from a single Fell Scream Blast is 2 double. It's 24, I believe.
Yeah, it's 24.
And Alan has the opportunity to heal up to 26 here, including the armor.
And get a full clear. Maybe that's the way to go about it. Like, obviously he knows there's one draw left, so he needs to think, what is the final card left in the deck? Because if he was to do 28 instead, he would need the full Eldraki Warblades as well. So he can't deal 28 damage on this turn because one card is going to be left in deck and there's no card draw left.
It is really, really close because even if he did heal out of range, he would have to then deal with the Il'gynoth on board and the Eldraki that follows. So Alan here is instead trying to take the 50-50 and he hits it! che0nsu's very last card in the deck is Il'gynoth.
That is heartbreaking. Oh!
And he's just dead because of it. Because if he uses the combo pieces for removal here, he has no more win condition.
Yeah, he just dies. He can't get there with just the Eldraki Warblades. Plus Il'gynoth, that won't be enough.
Unbelievable how this panned out. I thought che0nsu would have pretty much unlimited card draw because of the double skulls, but as much as Demon Hunter has that potential to blow you out with a 1-mana Il'gynoth, it also has the failure rate of you just not seeing the bottom of your deck, and if that one crucial card is the very last card, there is no win condition.
And you really do have to start questioning here if there was a line that could have led to, I don't want to say 100% victory, but 100% chance to have drawn Il'gynoth before the end of the game, because the real crucial difference maker here, as Alan does, clean things up, go through to the quarterfinals. Very nicely done to get there. The one difference maker for che0nsu is the fact that he played unoutcasted Spectral Sight in the turn where he could have drawn Il'gynoth. Obviously that had its merit because he could have just had 1 in 4 to win the game on the spot at that point, but he could have dumped the cards on the left side of his hand, which was Ethereal Orc Merchant, Fell Scream Blast, and the Moarg Artificer to clear the board, or at least clear most of it, heal a bunch of damage, saved the Talented Arcanist, played the other Philosophy first to copy the Moarg, and then played Outcast Spectral Sight to draw more cards from his deck and guarantee himself Il'gynoth. It's very, very finicky the way you can approach it, but I think he could have got himself one more card draw at the expense of an immediate chance at lethal and given himself a higher chance of getting there.
It could be. I will admit I was very much on board for the immediate Spectral Sight because I didn't have the foresight to see that the game would just end with che0nsu not necessarily seeing the bottom of his deck. And you have to balance the odds of that happening with the odds of Il'gynoth being the very last card and the odds of whether you can afford to wait. And there's just so many branching decisions that make OTK Demon Hunter, I believe, one of the very hardest decks to pilot in the current meta. And it's hard to even know, even with full information and looking at the game back, whether one line or the other was better. The only real way to know is